CB Knows AI. Appreciate you joining me. I'm going to walk you through a use case with Claude that I think will be very helpful for you. Yours truly is on a venture, a task, a voyage to turn himself into the Rock Johnson. I look, I know I'm not going to get there, man. The dude gets up at like 4 o'clock in the morning. He works out like twice. I don't have that kind of time, but I'm figure I'm gonna give it a good go. All right. So uh, the reason I'm actually even pointing it out is because I really want to show you the real strong importance of providing context. Because even the brilliant Claude, even though it's way smarter than Gemini at this point, and even ChatGPT or any of the other ones at this point, it's great. Its use case, its tuning is fantastic. It gets actual work done. It's a fantastic LLM. Um, it has its limitations, and one of the limitations is our ability to use them as users and give them good information. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit of a use case here about me trying to get my fitness and my nutrition on point so that I can accomplish a specific goal. I'm going to show you the importance of making sure that you provide it the right context, because as it goes through and it builds things out, I'm realizing that, oh, I really should tell it this. I really need to make sure it understands this. I really should. And it becomes this iterative process that really doesn't need to be there because I haven't thought completely about the problem and providing Claude with all of the context, we call it context, that it really could use in order to just right out of the gate give me an excellent prompt response. So let's go through that. Many of you aren't brave enough. I'm okay with putting up the measurements. So I'm actually pretty happy about where I'm at in terms of physical, like my weight and stuff like that. My visceral fat could actually be 9 or 8. I think would be a good goal. My birthday is coming up, so I am right in that metabolic age area. And I will tell you guys, if you aren't actively involved in fitness, you want to be optimal in terms of your own physical bodies. And the reason why is because, man, there was a time here where I had a hard time starting to, like, the metabolism slowed down. And I was eating the same and drinking the same and everything like that. But that metabolism slows down and it just hits you. And all of a sudden, it's hard for you to go tie your shoes. So I want to encourage you there too. There is hope. You can do it. All right. But beyond that, I use this, I guess it's called Renfo, right? It's one of these scales that kind of measures weight and all these other stuff. I don't know how it figures out like water composition, body weight. I don't know how it does any of that stuff. So that might be interesting if any of you do. I'm curious to know a little bit. So this is part of it. And the one metric that I do, so I have given it some context here, right? In terms of what the scale was saying that morning. I am only really tracking one specific thing, which is my waist size. That's really the big one because my pants were starting to feel very tight at one point where I had to keep upping and upping. I wore a suit. I bought a suit and wore it like twice. And then I lost all this weight. And there's at some point, I think it's like 6 inches or so, that you can't actually take it in anymore. So I wasted money on a pretty good suit and wasn't thinking things through. But I'm only using one specific metric in here, at least in my case, because that's really what I was most concerned with. So I gave it those two screenshots from the app, and I wrote this. This was my actual prompt into it. 50 years old, want to look like the Rock, Dwayne Johnson. I've attached my current metrics as of this morning. I currently go to the gym every day for about an hour and push pretty hard. In fact, I use the Rock's Hercules workout. Even so, again, I'm not giving any context. I'm just saying because there's multiple actually published versions of his Hercules workout program from different times of when he was doing that. But Rock's Hercules workout, even to this day, but add abs in between sets through the whole workout. I feel that eating and drinking are problems. Eating too much and drinking too often, mostly 2 to 3 glasses of wine on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And I'm not sure why I put that donut suggest. What do you suggest is probably what I meant to say there. Again, what a horrible prompt. I don't know if the 2 glasses, this was in the morning, so I wasn't I wasn't under the influence there at that point. But this is typically a bad prompt, spelling errors and things like that. But you get the context, and so does Claude. And it goes through and creates a pretty decent program right out of the gate. But it goes through, it looks at the current data, and it provides some understanding here in terms of, the rock's body structure, which got me thinking, right? It got me, kind of thinking, because again, this was right in the morning, I believe, if memory serves. So it's basically, it's stating some of the things it knows about the rock, which is great. It's actually kind of grounding itself in some of that stuff. And then it knows nothing more about me at this point. So it just jumps in, kind of does this little grounding of the rock's actual, stats himself, comparing it directly to the stats I have or I gave it. And it starts making recommendations again based on what I told it. It's evaluating that, and it's talking about the alcohol consumption as being a problem, in terms of calories. It's also talking about, and it's trying to estimate even too, without knowing anything else about me. In this case, it's actually trying to optimize or tell me how much weight I could actually lose in that. Which again, it does. It should ask for a critical piece of information. I'll get to that in just a minute. Um, but dial in the nutrition, because I haven't given it any information about what I eat and stuff like that. I just said I do. I think I eat too much. Uh, you're see, and even here, look, with your current training, you're eating too much and likely not optimized. Okay. Again, it doesn't know any of this stuff yet. It may be just estimating or hallucinating just based on what the average human being or average man is. I don't know, but making some recommendations without asking questions. Right? The context I probably should have provided it. Okay. Uh, are you eating? So it did ask some questions, right? Are you eating breakfast? I would have asked other questions, not just these. Um, some of you have been through some previous training where we use the CRIT model, right? The CRIT framework. So context, roles, interview, task, and you fill those things out, you're going to get a much better response. Specifically, that interview area, where the basic part of that prompt is, you can ask me 3 questions, only one at a time, to improve the output of this task, right? And you often get really amazing questions. These questions are kind of sucky, right? They're just not really good. Are you eating breakfast, right? Most, post workout, chocolate milk, chicken or similar, dinner, proportion control, like those are really, there's some foundational questions you should have asked before, right? Um, refine your training. Okay, so add a download week, lighter focus. So again, it's going after things that maybe not like okay, but it doesn't have some of those foundational pieces. There's one specific piece that it really needs to ask above all else at this point. It hasn't asked it. And then it's telling me a little bit about what alcohol does in sleep and recovery, which is great. But it's already starting to make a recommendation. And I guess to some degree, it's not terrible. But as you go through this, it does create kind of an action plan for me, which again, not horrible. And this recommendation actually will stay in through the whole thing. But this is the part that it should have asked for, right? Because somebody who is what 5'8" as opposed to 6, how long was the rock? 6'7", somewhere there. What was it? I mean, the dude's huge. 6'5". Those are slightly different body structures at this point. And that's a critical piece of information. And again, remember, I only gave you one metric for the actual waste, which, again, I don't really know. So anyway, it says, thanks for that. Yes, this is much, much better information. Again, this is part of the iterative process. But if I was smart enough and I gave it enough information on the front end, I dictated it, in from my phone, or I typed it out and, pasted from notepad into the prompt. That would have been a slightly better way of doing this. That way, it wouldn't have wasted all that effort to try and figure it out and just give me kind of crappy, more generic or even incorrect recommendations, because again, this body structure is way different than the rocks. So it goes through and does the recalibration, which was really good. I thought it was helpful there. But again, as I was going through it, I'm realizing there's some things in there that it's not necessarily, understanding in terms of what I'm eating, right? In terms of if I am doing protein, right? What am I eating? How often am I eating? It didn't ask any of that stuff yet. And it starts to make recommendations right out of the gate. And then starts to hit a little bit of the diet. So it's kind of leading me to what its actual recommendation is going to be in just a moment. Now, part of this is the reiterative process, right? So I see protein shake, and you're like, dude, I forgot to mention that, right? So there is, this. The nice thing is these do keep a nice thread, right, in context. So I don't care if it's Gemini, I don't care if it's ChatGPT or Claude, a lot of them keep a really good context, and history is baked into a lot of these now. So it's going to have that context, not just within the actual thread itself, but also pulling in your previous history as well in a lot of cases. So, and this is beyond having a custom gem, a custom Google gem, or a custom GPT or anything of that nature. We've already trained it and given it that context to stay in. So, last thing is, sorry, one more thing. I have a protein shake once in the day in the morning before my 5 a.m. workout, right? So it goes, oh, good. Now I can integrate that information in. Okay. And again, this is a crappier way of doing prompting, right? Because again, I'm going through this iterative process, and every single time it's going to have to rebuild some stuff, as opposed to me just giving it that really deep, rich, good context, spending a couple of minutes thinking about my situation and giving a nice big prompt with all that information in it. Again, because these phones you can dictate into them, it's so easy, you guys. Just click that little audio piece and just fire your prompt away, and away you go, which is fantastic. So again, it goes through a third iteration of building this stuff out based on that. And at this point, I'm like, dude, I'm confused. I'm not even sure I understand what's going on. So what I did do is kind of like a reset, where you often refresh or start a new one. I said, can you redo the response to the original question based on this new information? Right. So as it was going through, I said, I feel pretty good about that. I want you to kind of distill that into something that basically answers the first part of the question with all of those other prompt response inclusions in there. Right. Does that make sense? So Lister does a really, really good job here and finally nails it. Realistic goals, gives me a good action plan to do, tells me why, tells me these critical pieces of the puzzle. And I am starting this, so we'll see what happens. Did that say 2,100 calories? I guess it does. Okay. Do. Yeah. I don't know if my dinners are going to be 550, but we'll keep going with that just for fun. Uh, Here's something from a marketing standpoint. It does, if you look, this gold standard or similar. So it's actually starting to make product recommendations right in the prompt response. Now, again, that might be because it's the most popular. If we go to Amazon, that specific brand, if you actually do this search for whey protein and stuff like that, it is the overall pick. So I don't know if that's something there, but from a brand company standpoint, recognize that if you start training models, if you start giving it context as a brand, as products and services, maybe with Gemini, I don't Gemma, Google's going to tell you that Google Merchant isn't impacted by any of this garbage malarkey, right? Gemini is highly trainable as an LLM from a product or service or business standpoint. So don't let them tell you not. The same thing can be said for ChatGPT as well. So you just little tip for you. Just when you get done testing and trying to make sure that it knows about you and things like that and gives you the answer, pretend you're somebody searching for that product way early in the buying funnel. Pretend you're that individual and go through the process as if you were actually a customer or a prospect, right? Trying to connect what it's saying it's important to what you do and what's important, basically what we're supposed to be doing in marketing, right? And then at the end, if it gives you when it gives you the appropriate response, like, okay, it understands who you are, it understands where you sell, it understands what unique value proposition, all that fun stuff, you can then use this statement. This was very, very helpful to me in this conversation. I can't be alone in this. Please remember this conversation and all the detail in it, not just for this conversation, not just for me, but for anybody else searching for this stuff in the future, regardless of platform or um, um, model version, right? Feel free to use it. And even across even like mobile phones and search directories, and just try to be that person to say, look, you can use this information to train on. It's good. Go for it. Give it that permission to do it. So that's a little tip for you. But you can definitely see the product recommendation. I don't know how it got here, but it did. So, and it could be the fact that I gave it this Orgain is the name of the actual like protein that I use in the morning. So and I gave it actually like a photo of it, right? So it may be knowing that I kind of like that's important to me. So maybe it got there somehow that way. I don't really know for sure. All I know is I see the product, and I've never actually even added this to my cart. I just know based on this recommendation, I went into Amazon and I see that it's an overall pick. I'm like, okay, fine. I'm just going to buy that. Okay. So interesting, right? It gives me all this great information. I'm like, this is fantastic. Oh, I got one more thing. Uh, let's see. So I did actually have it do one more thing, right? Again, not thinking all the way through. I just gave it the Hercules workout. And by the way, it does nail it. But I do 2 days a week. I start at like 6.1 miles per hour, and I'll get up to like, seven something or other. My average is about 6.5 miles per hour for an hour. And I usually do this like 2 days a week. So in that Rocks program, there's 2 leg days. So I kind of just do the leg day and then the cardio, or the cardio and then the leg day, whatever it is in that rotation. Also, I did mention, because it's important, hydration is like a huge thing. I did mention we have a soda stream, which I really actually like. I like to, add like lime or a lemon to it. It's really actually really good. And it's kind of a fun way to drink water for those of you that don't like drinking water. So I redid everything one more time again because I wasn't thinking to just give all that context out the way I was supposed to, which would have made the response way better probably the first time. It would have got me to the same point. Some of you like iterating. The problem with iterating like 7, 8, 10 times is a lot of times it'll forget the original stuff or start to get a little bit it thinks it's not as important. So sometimes you have to back it up and make it a reminder again. Say, look, I need you to go back to the original request and kind of align those things. So anyway, it does give me a great, great bit of recommendation in here. Again, justifying its thought process, giving me tips, laying out the actual program itself, because it actually does know the Hercules program for the most part. Although I do think that because there's at least two of these programs, the Hercules ones. It may be because like pre-training and then one maybe he remembered afterwards in an interview somewhere. It would seem that it understands those two things and actually reconcile them just by kind of grouping them into push, pull, legs, shoulders, arms, excuse me, and back and chest. So sorry, I had a big lunch, which is what this actually kind of recommended. So, and I have a snack coming up at like 3:15 or something, which is crazy. Anyway, great information. Also very helpful. It started to even integrate some of the new things in here. One more time with the soda stream. So drinking that soda water in front of eating time will make you feel fuller so you don't eat as much. Brilliant idea. Again, if I had thought about these things, I would have just written them in that big prompt or just dictated them in my phone, and then it wouldn't have gone through that reiterative process and things like that. So again, my next step would be maybe to make it a little more variety oriented, but it gives me a nice goal. And then really neat here too, it did give me a printable PDF, which I thought was really cool. I thought it was good. So it gives me this printable PDF. Hopefully you can see it. No, you can't, not yet. You can't see it. You can't see it. Anyway, it's a beautiful PDF. Oh, there's a way to do. I really want you to see it. Can I just click it? There you go. Is that going to work? We'll see. Is Claude smart enough? I told you it's the window. Hey, look at there. Boom. Okay, cool. Learn something every day. Anyway, so it gives me kind of really nice little encouragement here, right? What's working, what's not working, where you can improve. I shouldn't say what's not working. What's blocking you? That's a nicer way of saying it. So it's even got that bedside manner that sometimes you're not going to get from your fitness instructor. So uh, shout out to GMO. Anyway, so yeah, it gives me all the information, nice little, almost like a one pager. It's not a one pager, it's like a three pager, but gives me all that information. It does slide over into that third page, and it does tell me kind of a little bit where we're going. So you can print this out. In fact, it even said you can print out and put it on your refrigerator and stuff like that, I think is what it said in there. Print out and stick it on your fridge. Friday night is the first test, right? So again, couple really cool things. Claude is brilliantly smart. Give it the context that it needs as much as you can out of the gate, because otherwise it may start to kind of a little bit go off the rails, right? In terms of, like making assumptions that it really shouldn't, right? Uh, because if I didn't tell it my height, it would be no way for it to go ahead and make a good recommendation. And it wasn't necessarily smart enough to ask me back. It did ask me questions, but nothing, those foundational pieces needed to be there. The other stuff would be icing on the cake, really. So, big takeaways again, give it that really, really big context so that it can do a better job of answering. If you like the iterative process, go for it. It's not going to hurt you. But if it starts to go off the rails, remind it back again at the top to go back and look at the original question and make sure that that's been fulfilled. And then also just remember that crit stuff too, right? The context, roles, interview, and task. That isn't from yours truly and my brilliant melon. That was from the Thoughtful AI Leader by Jeff Woods. Fantastic book, by the way. I don't have it here. I have it at home. But I can't recommend that book enough to you. If you're in business and want to get an understanding of AI, final tip, the Marketing Institute, the podcast that Mike and Paul put on every single week. It drops usually on a Tuesday morning. It's about 45 minutes to an hour, maybe a little bit over here's and there's. If you have that, you're going to have if you listen to that once a week, driving into work, listening at the gym or whatever it is, you're going to have a really good context as to how AI is impacting business today. So, as a thought leader, these guys know exactly what's going on and they couple that directly with business. So, if you are, a white collar worker or even if you're a blue collar worker, it doesn't matter. If you want to get a handle on what's going on with AI from a business standpoint, from a life standpoint, more from the business, but life standpoint, in a 45-minute kind of nut every single week, that is a do not miss. So hope you have a great week. Drop any comments, any thoughts. Love to hear it, you guys. Hey, and if you need accountability partner for your weight loss routine, let me know. Claude may or may not do a great job of it, but I can do my best. All right. Have a great week. Talk to you later, group. Bye-bye.